So thank you, Dan, for your nice words of introduction. Uh, you have heard extensively on Christianity. I'll try to speak fast so that you can save time. Yes, as Dan has said, that I come from India and a Hindu. So the paper will be largely focused on a Hindu mystic saint. Uh, I have great apprehensions as to how well I will get across to a community of philosophers who come from different religions and different cultures. But nevertheless, I'll try my level best to explain within the given time. Dan, please let me know when my time ends. So I'll go to the paper. So once again, greetings to you all. Namaste. Uh, and on behalf of all the Indian philosophers, I wish to greet you. So this afternoon, I will be speaking on a Vaishnavite uh, poet saint called Andal. But before I get to Andal herself, an 8th century poetess, I will speak very briefly on devotion, which is called bhakti in Sanskrit. And I'll also speak very briefly on what is called bridal mysticism. And then I'll take you to Andal herself. Now, devotion to a personal God or bhakti, henceforth I will call it as bhakti. You should understand that the term bhakti has been used to refer to devotion, loving devotion to a personal God, has been accepted as a means of liberation since ancient times in India. Reference to a personal God and loving devotion to Him for the redemption from worldly sufferings dates back to Shvetashvatara Upanishad itself, that is BC. However, the mainstream Vaidika tradition continued to be normative in the northern part of India, while in the south, the Agama tradition, which is a non-Vedic tradition, has been encouraging bhakti since pre-classical period and has emphasized bhakti to a personal God as the finest method to transcend human limitations and merge with the divinity. So in bhakti, one could establish the relation between oneself and the absolute, borrowing the human relations that we have in the mundane world, like the relation between a mother and a child, where you can conceive yourself. The devotee can consider herself as mother and consider God as a child, or you can have a relation of friendship with God, or as a servant to God, where you consider God as the master and yourself as a servant, or as the beloved of Lord, where God is the lover and the devotee is the beloved. Of all these, considering oneself as the beloved of Lord has wide acceptability in India, primarily due to the metaphysical backing it receives from some of the basic ontological positions commonly shared by most of the Indian philosophical schools. I'll tell you shortly what they are. It is a general tenet in Indian philosophy that while both God and the human individual are in essence pure consciousness, the latter, that is individual, human individual, since it is associated with the psychophysical adjuncts, we have a body and we also have psychic apparatus. And these adjuncts has been conceived as the other to the self, and therefore as part of the nature and the female principle. So God has been placed as pure consciousness, the pure male, while the human being, though he has this pure consciousness as his essence, has also this psychophysical adjuncts attached to him due to ignorance, and is part of nature and therefore a feminine principle. It is this alienation of the individual self from the absolute that is hoped to overcome through bhakti. Conceiving God as one's lover, generally known as bridal mysticism, and I'm sure bridal mysticism is very familiar in Christianity and Islam and almost all religions, world religions, though has been practiced differently in different religions, seem to carry certain common traits as far as India is concerned. You know that India has given birth to 4-5 religions, and in almost all these religions, there are certain common characteristic factors the bridal mysticism seem to share. Needless to say, that irrespective of the biological sex distinction, the devotee transposes to a feminine gender. Even if it is a male, the devotee will consider himself as a female, since all souls are considered as female in relation to the supreme being who is Purushottama, who alone is considered as the true male. Accordingly, in the literature, you often come across references where the devotee prepares herself for the reunion with the Lord, where you will find references like, I adorn myself to his liking. I decorate myself. I adorn myself to his liking. So, this adorning has its extensions spread to both physical and metaphysical realms, and they aren't considered to be mutually exclusive. Often, adorning takes a start from the physical adorning. Well, you decorate your body, and then you decorate your body with ornaments, with flower garlands, so on and so forth, in ways quite like how a young damsel, a young woman would, in the ordinary parlance, do to attract her lover, and soon it takes a lift to the metaphysical realm, necessitated by the mighty ontological status of the lover. Remember that here the lover is none other than the absolute self, and therefore it has this decoration has to take its extension to the metaphysical realms. As said in Guruvani, in Sikh, Guruvani is a Sikh text where it has been said, I quote, attuned to the divine name, the soul bride is rid of egoism. One should get rid of egoism, and she walks. Now, this feminine gender is commonly used for both the sex. She walks steadily in the way of his will. Thus, her decorations become meaningful. So that her decorations become meaningful. In her bridal appearance, the devotee wants herself to look beautiful. Now, again, this connotation of beauty takes its necessary metaphysical extensions. Again, to quote Guruvani, those who those whose inner beings are filled with the love for their divine beloved, they always look beautiful as they speak. Now, evidently, the metaphysical extensions of decoration would necessitate the devotee to keep away from the external and internal purities. As you take a metaphysical extension of decoration, decorating yourself, it suggests that you should get rid of the external and the internal impurities. A corollary to it is the natural aversion towards worldly relations and engagements, and eventually the self seems to withdraw from the external world to an inner world where the self learns to control her psychic organisms. What are the psychic organisms? The mind. Hinduism speaks about four inner apparatus. They are the mind, the memory, the intellect, and the I conscious. Mano, buddhi, ahankara, chitta. These are the four inner apparatus. So one need to control all these four inner apparatus in order to reach pure consciousness or purify the self, and prepares herself for a total surrender to her Lord, her Master, who is also the Master of the whole world. A.K. Ramanujan, who has done significant research in this area, he points out that in all devotional poetry, there is this tension between the formless God on one who is absolute and is called Nirguna in Sanskrit, and also the formful God who is Saguna. It's called Saguna Brahman and the Nirguna Brahman. So if he were entirely a person, what is this tension? If he were to be entirely a person, he would not be divine. He would be just like one among us. And if he were to be entirely a principle, just a principle, a Godhead, then one could not approach him. He is not an approachable person. Now, the Vaishnava tradition overcomes this dichotomy by conceiving Lord is characterized by both paratva, that is otherness. He is indeed other. He is over and above the world. He is over and above the world and the individual self. That is called paratva, otherness, and also saulabhya. What is saulabhya? Easy of access. Though it is a fact that he transcends this world, he is easily accessible for the human being. So he is both here and beyond, both tangible as a person and intangible as a principle. Such is the nature of the ground of all being. Such is the nature of this absolute God. And mind you, it is not either or, but it is both. He is both transcendent and at the same time easily accessible. Now, the deep yearning for the vision and the company of Lord is yet another characteristic of this type of devotion. I'm speaking about bridal mysticism. Swati Tirunal, a great musician of Kerala belonging to 16th century, great composer, in his compositions has beautifully depicted the pangs of separation the self suffers. In fact, you can also say that self enjoys because suffering, when it comes to aesthetics, it's enjoyment. It is technically called Vipralambha Shringara. In most of Swati's compositions, which are enacted as dance dramas, Lord Vishnu is being characterized as the lover and the devotee, the dancer, who's of course in the dance form, with all gross and subtle ornaments, awaits for the arrival of the Lord. And she enacts the pangs of separation that she is suffering from. And this is a beautiful moment. In fact, this is a wonderful moment. And what happens, in fact, the extreme aesthetic pleasure the devotee enjoys here takes her to another realm where the elevated aesthetic experience culminates in a mystic union of the self with the absolute. Now, it is also philosophically interesting to note here that here aesthetic seems to merge with metaphysics. In today's presentation, I shall take a slice from the enormously big Bhakti literature of South Indian Vaishnavite tradition and relate to you the story of the mystic um, Sri Andal, not story as such, the philosophy of Sri Andal, a poetess of 8th century, who declared herself as the bride of Lord Ranganatha, the charming lord of Sri Rangam. Lord Ranganatha is Lord Vishnu himself, uh, who has been placed in Sri Rangam. Andal is said to be the single woman poet saint among the 12 Alvars. Now, who are these Alvars? Alvars are considered to be the 12 supreme devotees of Lord Vishnu who were instrumental in popularizing Vaishnavism in Tamil speaking regions. Now, Tamil is a language which is as ancient as Sanskrit and which has survived since pre Christian era and has huge literature for its claim. And Alvars uh, belong to this Tamil culture. These Alvars were influential in promoting the Bhagavata cult and the two Hindu epics, namely Ramayana and Mahabharata. The religious works of these saints were in Tamil and were compiled, and the text is called Nalayiram Divya Prabandham, 4,000 verses, which are very often sung in Vishnu temples of South India almost on a daily basis. Now, the myth is that these alvars were nothing but Lord Vishnu's own weapons, his own parts, which who have taken birth in the age in this age of Kali. Kali means the present age where righteousness is in a very bad shape, so that the ordinary people would learn how to reach the divine abode by looking at these virtuous lives. And these alvars were supposed to be the model devotees who would show way for the ordinary people how to get back to the divine abode. Now, Andal, as a name literally means, Andal literally means the one who reigns. Now, whom she did reign? Do you know she has reigned none other than the Supreme Lord herself. She succeeded in establishing lordship over Venkatanatha, the Lord who rules over the three worlds. As you read her story, what astonishes you is her courage. She has lived only till 18. Uh, and what astonishes you is her courage and her openness. As a young woman, she has never concealed her love for the Lord. A mystic saint as she was, two of her poetic works. She has written these works when she was 16, hardly 16 years. The first book is called Tirupavai, which were written at a young age of 16, depicts poetic maturity, and the latter work is called Nachiyar Tirumuri. It literally means the sacred song of a lady. Now let me take you for a quick ride through the rather interesting biography of Andal, which in fact reveals all that she was. Let me begin with her father, Periyalvar, whose original name is Vishnu Chittan, who was an ardent devotee of Lord Ranganatha and worked as an assistant priest in Sri Rangam temple. He was childless, and one day he found a small girl child under a tulsi plant in the garden inside the temple. And the myth goes that the child was none other than goddess of earth. In Hindu mythology, it has been believed that goddess of earth is a consort of Lord Vishnu. Well, Vishnu Chitta took this child and brought her home and named her Kodai. So this Kodai, little Kodai, grew in an atmosphere of devotion. And since her child, she has been listening to stories of Lord Krishna, and she was very attached to Lord Krishna and considered herself as his beloved. As time passed, her resolve strengthened, and she thought constantly about marrying Ranganatha of Tiruvarangam. Lord Ranganatha, the idol installed of Lord Ranganatha is in a reclining position where he is lying on top of a serpent. As a temple priest, it was Vishnu Chitta's duty to tie garland for the temple, and his daughter used to assist him. Little Kodai also used to assist him in tying flower garlands for the Lord. And it is said that after tying the flower garland meant for Lord Ranganatha, she used to adorn herself with the sacred garland and wear it in the temple. That garland which was to be placed at the idol has been already worn by his daughter, and he was worried about that. And what has happened that night? So what Periyalva did was that he refused to take the garland that day. Wait a minute. He refused to take that garland to Lord because it was already been worn by his daughter, and therefore he thought that it is not appropriate for him to take the garland. And that night, Lord appeared in his dream and wondered why the garland did not reach him that day. And Periyalvar, her father, answered that it was desecrated by his daughter. And he said, no, consecrated. She has made the garland auspicious. And then he says, I like that. And then he insisted that henceforth you need to bring only those garlands which has already been worn by Kodai, his daughter. True to this dream, when the new garland was put, it fell down. It seems Lord did not accept that garland, and henceforth he used to take only those garlands which was already worn by his daughter. As days passed, Andal became physically weak due to the unbearable pangs of separation from her Lord. Her father thought of getting her married to a suitable bridegroom, but she resisted. One day, and she said that I'm going to marry only Lord Ranganatha, that is Lord Vishnu. And how will this poor father get her married? What will he do? One day she had a dream in which Lord Ranganatha married her, and together they went in procession mounted on an elephant. So while in the morning she detailed the whole of the dream to her father, and while detailing the rituals they performed as part of the marriage, there are several ritual performances that one need to do during the wedding. And she narrates to her father how Lord Ranganatha held her toes. It's a ritual that the bridegroom will have to put toe rings onto the bride's toes. And she tells her father that how Lord held her toes and put the toe rings onto her feet. And then her father closed his ears and he said, little one, do you know what you are trying to say? He's the Lord of the three worlds, and you're saying that he held your feet. Then she said, exactly, that is what happened. He did indeed do that. And the story goes on to say that Vishnu Chitta was helpless because this is all dream, and he didn't know, and his daughter was adamant that she would marry only Lord Ranganatha, and how was he to get her married to an idol? And then one day, Lord Ranganatha came in his dream, and then he insisted that deck her up as a bride and then bring her to the temple. And Vishnu Chitta did as he was instructed, and he was brought to the temple. And in front of the whole community consisting of devotees, the king himself, attendants of the temple, all this has happened in the 8th century AD, and a father watching, Andal boldly strode into the sanctum sanctorium, climbed atop of the beautiful image of the reclining Lord Vishnu, and simply disappeared. And then after that, no one has seen Andal. So this is the story. As you would agree, the story of Andal is one where history, fiction, and faith are interwoven to bring out a poetic depiction of a mortal's union. After all, she is a very young girl of 16, and a mortal's union with the immortal self. But can we meaningfully interpret this young damsel of less than 16
Sorry,
year
excuse
old?
me. We
Yes.
don't have any more time. If you can make a conclusion and sorry.
Uh, yeah. How much of time do I have now?
And for conclusions or final remarks, if it's possible.
Oh, okay. I thought that I have 20 minutes and then I have come prepared for that. Well, I suppose the timing has not been neatly divided. Never mind. So what I will do was I'll just try to get across what I wanted to tell you. So what I have done is I have tried to analyze the two works of Andal uh, here, and in this I have tried to give a feminist reading. Feminist not in the postmodern sense. Feminist in, I mean, with a very fresh approach, but I will have to read all that to get across you probably. So what I have spoken about her literary contributions in then the Tirupavai, where she speaks about the penance that one has to undertake if you want to reach Lord, or if you have to have Lord as your bridegroom. Uh, and to sum up, I would say that Andal continues to inspire women of South India even today. And there is something called an Andal Mandali, Goda Mandali, that she's also been called as Koda, remember. So it's called a circle of Andal, Goda Mandali, which functions. And this Tirupavai has been chanted in the month of Margari, that is between December and January, in all Vishnu temples. And it has been interwoven with the culture of South India. And I'm sorry that I could not relate. I'm doing gross injustice to Andal. She forgives me. And so that is all. I finished.